what linguistics is? Can I say linguistics is? Yes, because linguistics is a what? A plural form? No, a singular form. So the S here is actually part of the word, right? So when you say physics, for example, it's a field of science. When you say mathematics, it's a field of science as well. When you say linguistics, it's also a field of science. So the S here is not S, the plural S. It's actually part of the word, okay? It's part of the word. It's actually a singular noun, okay? My question was last time, we have to understand the title of the course, okay? The title of the course is Introduction to Linguistics and not Introduction to Language. I mean, obviously, the word linguistics has to do with language. Does it? Yeah. Yes. But the question is, my question was last time, why did I call this course Introduction to Linguistics and not actually Introduction to Language? Is there a difference between the word language and the word linguistics? Yeah? Anyone remembers from last time? What is the difference between the word linguistics and the word language?
When we say linguistics, we talk about science and language, not only language.
Exactly. When you talk about linguistics, you talk about science, a field of science. We're not talking about language, just language. We're not going to describe language. We're actually going to study the language, but in a scientific way. Yeah? So, my question last time was, oh, sorry, I have to do this. Yeah, okay. So my question was last time, what is linguistics? And this is the title of the article that I added to your textbook. You have to understand the title of the course before actually talking about something else. So, what is linguistics? We said last time, it is the scientific study of language. Notice what I did here is actually I underlined the word scientific and I underlined the word language because those are the two key words in the definition. Right? Okay. If you look here, I said this statement raises two questions. It means I'm going to ask myself two questions if I said linguistics is the scientific study of language. Notice I did not say introduction to the study of language. I said introduction. I was saying scientific, not actually study merely. Yeah? I have to add the word scientific. I asked my students in the other section and I said, if I said linguistics is the study of language, is actually this definition is not accurate. I have to add the word scientific. So if I, for example, asked you in the exam to define linguistics, of course, I don't give definitions in my exams. This is actually a waste of time. But if I asked you what linguistics is, and you said it is the study of language, your definition is not accurate. Why? Because I have to add the word scientific. The question is, what do we mean by that? I mean, we said linguistics is the scientific study of language. The question is, what does that mean? Yeah? Okay. So I have two questions for you. Number one, we said, what do we mean by scientific? What does that mean? So Ms. Suha says, linguistics is the scientific study of language. What does that mean? We have to understand the word scientific, and we have to understand the word language in order to understand the definition of linguistics. Do you see what I'm doing here? Yeah? Okay. So we said question number one, what do we mean by scientific? Question number two, what do we mean by language? Notice I actually colored these two words. The most important words in the definition. Let's try to answer the first question. What do we mean by scientific? Okay, I said linguistics is actually a field of science. It's not like literature. So let's say, for example, you're studying courses of literature. What do you actually do? You study what is beyond the language, right? You have to have an imagination. You have to be creative in order to actually interpret words. In linguistics, you don't have to be creative. You don't have to have imagination. It's actually just like science. When you study physics or chemistry, yeah? You know what physics and chemistry are? Yeah. So a physicist is someone who actually studies physics, and a chemist is someone who actually studies chemistry. So when you talk about we're going to study the language scientifically, we're actually going to be scientists. Just like scientists. Yeah? Look at this. Okay, continue. Linguistics is a science. That's why what I meant by the scientific study of language. It has to do with science. So it says on the slide, look at the slide, please. Linguistics is a science, therefore a linguist is a scientist. Okay, well, what do I mean by linguist? Linguist, someone who studies linguistics, exactly. Okay, so a linguist studies language in much the same way as a scientist studies physics or chemistry. So as a linguist, or as linguists, we are scientists because linguistics is science. Notice actually they use also of the, let's say, the morpheme S. You say linguistics, just like physics. It means just like mathematics. It has to do with science. Yeah? Okay. Look at this. What does that mean? If you want to study something scientifically, okay, let's just forget about this. Let's imagine we have a chemist. A chemist, someone who studies chemistry. Okay. Let's see how this chemist actually studies things. How do chemist studies, how do chemists actually study things? What do they do in chemistry? What do they do in chemistry?
They study things in a biological way.
Yeah, okay. They use logic.
Use the chemistry.
Experiments as well. So what do they do in chemistry? They actually perform experiments. And that's what we're going to do in linguistics. We're going to be just like chemists. We're going to actually do experiments. But not actually in the traditional sense of the word, where you actually do experiments just like chemists and then come up with a theory. Yeah? In linguistics, we're actually going to have a hypothesis. That's what they do in science. In science, how do they study things scientifically? They have hypotheses. If you're talking about a hypothesis, that's one hypothesis, okay? Say hypothesis with an E. Look at this. I see you're confused. You see this hypothesis? This is actually the singular form of the word. If you want to have the plural, it's going to be with the E. Hypotheses. Okay? So in science, what do? We have hypotheses. We have theories. My question was for my students in the other section, what is the difference between a theory and a hypothesis? They're not the same thing. When you talk about a hypothesis, okay, you have to understand one thing. If you do not know the meaning of any word, then I say, go home and look it up. Do not ask me about the meaning of words. We're not in 10th grade anymore, okay? So if you do not know the meaning of a word, go home, look it up. What does it mean, look it up? Search it in a dictionary, okay? So my question last time was, what is the difference between a hypothesis and a theory? What is the difference, Taqi? What is the difference?
Hypothesis is like a suggestion, you can change it. But a theory is from scientifics, from old time, you can't change it.
Yeah, we can say a hypothesis is actually not proven. Yeah? Hypotheses are not proven. You have to test these hypotheses. Okay? If this hypothesis is true, it becomes a theory. Again, what is the difference between a hypothesis and a theory? A hypothesis is not proven. It has to be tested. If it's true, it becomes a theory. A theory is actually, it is true. It was tested and it turned out to be true. There is the difference between a hypothesis and a theory. And that's what we're going to do in linguistics, since we are scientists, just like, since we are linguists, just like scientists, we're going to have hypotheses and theories. Yeah? Okay. So it says here, it means that a linguist observes language. Which is language? Observe it, yeah? Language use, form a hypothesis, and then test this hypothesis and refine it. So we're going to have a hypothesis, and then we're going to test this hypothesis. If it's true, it's going to become a theory in linguistics. If it's not true, I'm going to cross it out. Is this clear? Okay. So this hypothesis may eventually become a theory if it's true. So we could add something here. We could say it could become a theory if it's true. Do you see the difference between a theory and a hypothesis? Yeah? Okay. This is what we mean by scientific study of language. We're going to have hypotheses and theories. The question is, can we have an example? I have an example for you. What does that mean? Okay, look at this. This is my example. I gave this example for my student last time, but since this lecture is actually recorded, And then also we have students who weren't here last time. They have to understand what linguistics is before we actually continue with the course, yeah? This is my example. So I came up with a hypothesis. I said my hypothesis was adjectives always precede nouns in English. Precede, what does it mean? Come before. Okay, again, the hypothesis says, remember, a hypothesis is not proven. It's not true yet. We have to test it to see if it's true or not. Okay, so my hypothesis is adjectives always precede nouns in English. There's an example. Example from English to support this hypothesis: a good man. Man is a noun. Good is an adjective. So this example supports this hypothesis, right? The question is, can I say this hypothesis is true, and can it actually become a theory?
No.
Raise your hand if you know the answer. If you say yes, tell me why. If you say no, also tell me why.
No, because sometimes adjectives comes precedes nouns.
After, you
after,
mean?
yes.
Yes? Okay. So if you look at this hypothesis, if I can find other examples in English that are actually against this hypothesis. So I'm actually testing English. I'm looking for data. I'm looking at English data. Okay? I'm looking for examples from English that are actually against this hypothesis. This is what I'm doing. This is how I test this hypothesis. Let's see, can we find examples in English that are actually against this? Yes. Look at this. Carrying out a detailed examination of the position of adjectives in English, we find out that we're missing a slide. We're missing a slide. Just a minute. I have that in my other. Okay, just a minute. So that's lecture 1. Okay. I have to download this first. Just a minute. Okay, I'm missing a slide. Okay. I think this is the slide after that. Yes, I'm missing this slide. Sorry about the... Yes, that's what I need. So we said we're looking for examples in English that are actually against my hypothesis. So if you look at this, I found examples in English that are against my hypothesis. Example number 1, the man is good. Where is the noun? Noun. Where is the adjective? Good. Is the adjective after the noun? Yes. So it is against my hypothesis. If you remember my hypothesis, it was adjectives come before nouns. If you look, we have other example. It's actually the title of this famous movie, Mission Impossible. Have you ever asked yourself, why do I have the adjective after the noun? Yeah? Why do I have the adjective after the noun? This is actually an example that is against my hypothesis. So what should I do with my hypothesis? If these examples are actually against it, cross it out or change it. Yeah? So what I can say actually, okay, sometimes instead of actually always, if you go back to the hypothesis, it says adjective always. That's what makes the hypothesis actually not true, because you have the word always. And we found out that we have examples where the adjectives come after nouns. So what should I do? What I should do is, I can change my hypothesis. And instead, I should go back to the hypothesis, sorry. Okay, I should change the word always into, could be sometimes. I can say, adjectives sometimes come before nouns or precede nouns. That's number 1. Number 2, adjectives sometimes can come after noun if they are actually following a verb, just like is. Yeah? Okay, for Mission Impossible, how can I explain that?
Somewhere.
Some phrases. Yeah? This is a phrase, this is not a word. Okay? Okay, if you still have problems with words and phrases, I strongly suggest that you go and read about them. I'm not going to talk about words and phrases in this class. This is not my job. My job is to talk about linguistics and not actually sentences, phrases, and words. If you want to know what sentences, phrases, and words are, go and actually review your writing 1 class. Okay? So this is actually a phrase, mission impossible. How can I explain that the fact that the noun is before the adjective? I can say that we have fixed phrases in English. Fixed phrases where you have the noun or the adjective after the noun. Yeah, some fixed phrases. What does that mean? Very few phrases in English that have this. Most of them actually are borrowed from other languages. You're going to see in this article if you have read it. How many of you have read it? Yeah? Have you seen other examples in here? Look at this. If you have the textbook, you have on page 6, you have other examples. Other examples of fixed phrases in English where you have the adjective after the noun. So, eventually, this is the theory. I tested the hypothesis. This is not actually a hypothesis because the hypothesis is now actually tested. And I came up with this. Number 1, adjectives can be attributive. This is actually a big word for you, but attributive means they can occur before a noun. We call this an attributive adjective. Or we can actually use simple words. We can say adjectives sometimes can occur before a noun. Number 2, adjectives also sometimes can occur after a noun following a verb, just like this man is good, just like we said, right? Number 3, we can say a few adjectives can come in fixed phrases, just like mission impossible and the examples you have here in your article. Is this clear? Yes. Is this clear? What do I mean by scientific? Yeah? So again, we said linguistics is the scientific study of language. What do we mean by scientific? We actually have hypotheses. We test these hypotheses. If they are true, they become a theory. If they are wrong, we have to change them. We cross it out and we have to change them, just like we did here. Questions about question number 1. What do we mean by scientific? Do you understand what scientific means? Yes. Yeah? Okay. If we go back, let's go back to what linguistics is. Yes. Remember, the first question was, what do we mean by scientific? And we answered that. Yeah? Question number 2. What do we mean by language? What is language? Anyone? What is language?
The way of
What's your name?
Amal.
Amal. Yes, Amal. What is language?
The way of communicate.
Yes. Okay. So Amal says language is a way of communication. Do you agree or disagree? If you agree, tell me why. If you disagree, tell me why. Yes.
Yes, the language is a set of signals that help others to contact with other and make communication by word or signal.
Good. What's your name?
Lama.
Lama says language is actually a set of signals that we use to communicate and to connect with other people. Anyone wants to add something else? Do you want to add something? Okay. Let's think about animals for a second. So, as human beings, we use what? Language to communicate. Let's think about animals. Do they communicate?
No.
Yes.
No? Yes, of course.
Yes.
Do you think animals communicate?
Yeah.
Of course they do. Okay. I think I gave you an example last time about bees.
Yes.
You know what bees are?
Yes.
Bees actually communicate. I think they use dancing. Yeah? Bees dance in order to communicate. Think about dolphins. Do you think dolphins actually produce sounds?
Yes.
Yes. Think about chimpanzees and monkeys. Do they communicate? Yes. They use sounds. Actually random sounds. So animals also have their own way of communication. Can I actually define language by saying it's a way of communication? Animals also communicate. Animals also have their own ways of communication. How can I change my definition? I mean, is our communication the same thing as the communication of animals? No, it's different.
Our communication is accurate.
Accurate. We're going to talk about this, characteristics of human languages. Okay? So again, we said, some students said, language is a way of communication. Okay, that's partly true. It's not entirely true. why isn't it entirely true? It's not accurate. This definition is not accurate because also animals have their own way of communication, right?
We can say, the language is a kind of communication, not.
A kind.
Yes.
By using
Do we have
words.
other ways of communication other than language?
Not other language.
It is a language,
We can
non-verbal communication. Yeah.
We can communicate with signals. We can
Sounds.
communicate.
Can you give me an example? Can you give me an example?
We can use to communicate body language.
You can use body language.
body language.
Still, it's a way of communication.
Yes.
Yeah? We call that non-verbal communication. You also have oral communication, which you use words by mouth. You also have written communication, right? The question is, okay, animals have their own ways of communication. Us as a human beings have our own way of communication. The question is, how do animal communication differ from our own communication?
Our own communication is complex.
Yes, just a minute. Actually, you have it here. Look at this. What is language? Notice what I said. Language is a set of signals by which we communicate. And I said this is not accurate. Why? Because animals also communicate. There must be a difference between language and animals' communication. So my question is, look at this. However, animals have a communication system. They do. Bees communicate. Chimpanzees, monkeys, they communicate. My question is, how do human languages differ from animal communication? The question is human language different from animal communication, or is it the same? Different. In what ways? Yes, Tasneem, right? Yes, Tasneem.
Our language, every single word or signal we did, it means something in our word.
Yes.
But the animal's communication, it doesn't mean.
It's random.
Yeah.
Yes?
It's
Okay,
not-
Tasneem says, actually our communication or our language is very accurate. It means we use special words for special meanings. So when I say table, you understand, or desk, I'm actually talking about the desk. When I say a chair, I actually refer to a chair. I'm very accurate. I'm very precise. The word precise means accurate. Yeah? So number one, we can say human languages are precise. It means humans are accurate. They're not actually random, just like monkeys. When monkeys actually produce sounds, do they mean anything? Of course not. Just random. Yeah? Number two. What's your name?
Yasmin.
Yasmin. Yes, Yasmin.
Our language is flexible.
Flexible.
One word has a lot of meanings.
Exactly. Very good. You can say human languages are actually flexible. Just like Yasmin said, I can actually use different expressions to mean the same thing. Can anyone please give me an example? Again, my question is, we said human languages are flexible. It means I can use different expressions to say the same thing. Give me an example. Yes.
If someone come to my house, we can talk. If you want to leave, we can say to his or to her, you are not late, or you can go.
Yes, good. So you should actually, you're late. It means it's time to leave. Or you can say, please leave.
Or
I'm
don't
just
have-
meaning the same thing. Other examples. Other examples. Okay, let's say, for example, I'm walking down the street and I saw a very big building. And I said, oh, this is a very big building. And my friend said, this is a huge building. Do we mean the same thing? Yes. This is what I mean with a phrase, human, or with a sentence. Human languages are flexible. It means I can use different expressions to mean the same thing. Can animals do that?
No.
Of course not. Okay. Other things?
The human language is not just a vocal system. It can be expressed by writing.
Exactly. That's actually number 3. You can say, or we can say, human beings have a system of writing. Do animals have system of writing? No, they don't. Do animals write? Of course not. Do we write? Yes. That's what makes our communication different from animals. We actually have a system of writing. We have letters. We have signals that we use to write. Yeah? Other differences? Other differences?
Human language is complex than
Complex, yes. Human languages are very, very complex. I mean, animal communication, is it complex? Of course not. It's very simple and very primitive. Yeah? Okay, I think I gave you an example last time and I said, imagine I actually went to the center of Africa. Yeah, I went to the jungles of Africa and I met a tribe. You know what a tribe is?
Yes.
I met a tribe and it seems this tribe is very primitive, very simple. Yeah? Do they have a simple language?
No.
Of course not. If this tribe is simple, it doesn't mean, or primitive, it doesn't mean they have a primitive or inferior language. All human languages are what? Complex, all of them. Even if these people are actually primitive. Okay? It's like there is no connection between animal communication and human languages. Human languages are very complex. Animal communication are very simple. Do we have something in between? We don't. You either have complex human languages or very simple animal communication. Nothing in between. Yeah? Okay. Other differences you would like to add? Yes?
Human languages develop and change. But
Yeah, you can say that. You can say that. Actually, with the invention of new words, could be borrowing from other languages. You can say that.
the human language is productive more than
Productive. Yes, that's a very important characteristic of human language. Human languages are productive, or it has the productivity characteristic. What does that mean? What does that mean when I say human languages are productive? What does it mean? Yes.
can be developed.
Okay. Not actually pretty accurate. Yeah? Okay. We all know. You want me to say why? We want to add something.
They can find
Yasmin,
the
right?
llama.
You're Yasmin. You Lama. Yes,
They
Lama.
can find the other word.
Okay.
can you explain the other ones to understand about this?
That's flexibility. If you actually use other words to explain the same thing, that's the flexibility characteristic.
We can put a rule, for example, like the present continuous, and it can produce countless amount of sentences.
Very good. Excellent. So what he's saying, for example, if you have a verb in English, you know you can attach ing to it, right? So we all know that ing forms are attached to verbs. Is that true?
Yes.
How many verbs I can actually, let's say, produce using this rule? Infinite number of verbs. I can say swimming, walking. I can have any verb in English. And then add ing, then I'm going to have a new verb. So what does it mean? What do we mean by productivity? It means we could have one rule, and we can actually produce an infinite forms by using this rule. I'll give you another example. Let's say, for example, we all know that in English, sentences start with a subject. Is that true? Then a verb, then an object. Is that true? How many sentences you can produce using this rule? How many sentences? A lot of sentences, an infinite number of sentences. Yeah? This is productivity. Okay, it's not the same, for example, in Arabic, where you have the verb first, then the subject, then the object. How many sentences you can produce in Arabic using this rule? A countless or an infinite number of sentences. This is what we mean by productivity. Is this clear? Yeah? So I have them here for you. Look at this. Human languages are flexible. We talked about this. Flexible means you can actually express the same thing using different expressions. Complex means human languages are complex, and all human languages are complex. There is no primitive or inferior language. Okay? Number 3, precise. Or you can use the word accurate. You can say human languages are accurate or human languages are precise. Human languages use special words for special meaning. Okay? You're not actually supposed to memorize that. You have to understand what it means. Okay? Then you have productive. I just talked about productive. Okay? Productivity, it means you can have one rule and you can produce an infinite number of expressions, forms, and sentences using this rule. Yeah? Can be expressed in writing. Human languages have a system of writing. Do animals have a system of writing? Of course not. And that's what makes human languages special. Then you have number 6. Yes, that's why I think last time I asked you to think about this sentence. Human languages are arbitrary and systematic at the same time. What does it mean? Okay, let's think about the word arbitrary. What does it mean, arbitrary? Irregular? Argument? What does it mean, arbitrary? It means very random. Yeah? Oh, sorry, that's my phone. Okay. So we said human languages are arbitrary. It means human languages are actually random. But at the same time, I say human languages are systematic. It means they actually follow a system. How can I explain that? So again, I say human languages are arbitrary. They're very random. And number 2, they are systematic. How can I explain that? You in the back. How can we explain that? Have you read your article? No? How can we explain that? Human languages are arbitrary and systematic at the same time.
Maybe
Yes, Tasneem.
maybe different languages is not the same. It hasn't the same system or rules. So it's arbitrary. Or
Yes, you're
random.
very close. Continue. Yes.
But the one language, every single language is very accurate in with the people who use this language.
Yes, good. Anyone wants to add something else? Yes, Smith.
Like when we put two languages, for example, each language has its rules. Okay, which
Yes, but the way they use this rule is
Yes.
actually very arbitrary.
exactly.
Very random. Yes.
Language are arbitrary in their selection and combination, but semantics in that similar ideas.
Okay, good. It means, let's say these
selection of
languages choose different words for different things, but they do mean the same thing. They actually follow a system in that. Okay. So we said human languages are arbitrary, they're random. Okay, let's look at this. This is a desk, right? Okay, why did I call it a desk? Not actually a table or a chair or a watch or a mobile. I call this a desk. Why?
We know it's like this.
We don't know. It's actually very random, very arbitrary. There's actually no relationship between the word disk and the item disk.
We make the relationship.
We don't make it actually. It's actually very random. If you call someone, what do you call this a door? Can you answer this question? No, we cannot. Can you? No. Why do we call it a door? I mean, why can't I call it, for example, a chair? We don't know. It's very random. So when they actually invented the language, they said, okay, let's call this a desk. Let's call it a chair. Let's call this a computer. Why? There's no reason for that. It's very arbitrary or very random. There's no intrinsic relationship between the word itself and the item itself. Okay? That's what it means by arbitrary. And just like what students said, it seems that actually they read the article. When they talk about other languages, for example, let's say, for example, in French, they say this is la porte. It means door. Why French people call this porte? And let's say English people, they call it a door. We don't know. It's very arbitrary. There's no relationship between the word and the item itself. Yeah? But how can I say they are arbitrary and systematic? Systematic because they have rules. Rules, for example, in forming the sentences. So in English we say, you start with a subject, then you have the verb, then you have the object. It's very systematic. You see what I'm talking about? Do we understand what this means? Arbitrary and systematic at the same time. Do you have any questions about human languages characteristics? Anyone? Would you like to ask a question? No? Okay, let me continue. Okay, that's the first slide. That's the other slide. Yes. The going to continue with this. Language and medium. Let's try to understand the word medium. Okay, if you want actually to know what language is, you can write books about it. Yeah? But I'm giving a brief introduction to what language is. Okay? What is medium? What do I mean by medium?
Singular of media.
It's not actually, it is, yes, but when I mean medium here, it's like the channel, the thing that I use language to communicate with other people. For example, let's say if I want to communicate, if I want to use written communication, what do I use? Paper. Okay, if I'm talking to you, I'm using language as a way of communication orally. What is the medium? Air. Yeah? The medium is the thing that you use to actually communicate with someone. Okay, so let's say, for example, written communication, we use paper. So instead of actually talking to you, I could use paper, I could write you something. I'm communicating with you using language, but this time I'm using paper. Okay, I'm talking to you, I'm actually communicating with you orally. What do I use? The air. The air is the medium. For written communication, the paper is the medium. Okay? So, language and medium, we actually, if you look at this, language is an abstract system. The word language is abstract. What does that mean? It means, can you touch language? Of course not. It's an abstract word. Yeah? When you say this is abstract, it means you cannot touch it. However, it can be physically realized as speech and writing. Actually, we can hear speech. We can touch writing, but we cannot touch language. So think about it. Language as an abstract system that is actually physically realized into writing and speech. What is the medium for speech? The air. What is the medium for writing? It's a paper. Yeah? This is what you have in your article. You can find this in the article that I've given you. So actually, you can find this, just a second. Look at page 8. You can find this here. Yeah? This is the diagram that you have here. So it's actually, it's basically the same thing. When you talk about language, which is an abstract, then it's actually, you have a medium in order to actually transmit language, in order to have communication. Concrete, it means I can touch it. When you say abstract, I cannot touch it. Okay? If you look at this, you have the mediums are speech and writing. It's actually not very clear in the diagram what the mediums are, but you can think of the medium for speech is the air. And you can, it doesn't have to be the air. It could be, for example, you're talking to someone by phone. Yeah? So it could be the phone is the medium for speech. Yeah? When you think about writing, you have the medium, is paper. It could be not just paper. For example, you're writing something over the internet. It's actually electronic. Yeah? But still you're using writing. Good. Do you understand what this means on page 8? Yes. Do you have any questions about it? This is actually very theoretical. I know, it's obvious, but they're actually linguists or theorists make theories for everything. Yeah? Okay, let's continue. The most important thing that I'm going to talk about today is the components of language. So we talked about what language is. We talked about language and the medium. And number 3, we're going to talk about the components of language. Okay, if we want to study any language in the world, let's go back to the definition of linguistics. We said linguistics is the scientific study of language. We're going to study language. But the question is, can I study the language as a whole? It's very difficult for us to study the language as a whole. In order to study language, we need to divide the language into components. You know what components are? If you don't know the meaning of a word, go look it up. Okay? So, we cannot study the language as a whole. We have to divide the language into components in order to make it easy for us to study the language. Yeah? So, let's say linguists decided to actually divide the language into sounds. They said the language is made up of sounds. Is that true? Yes. Number 2, they said language is made up of words. Number 3, they said language is made up of phrases and sentences. Number 4, they said language is also made up of meaning. So linguists said, okay, in order to study the language, I'm going to study the sounds first, then I'm going to study the words, then I'm going to study the phrases and sentences, then I'm going to study the meaning. My question was, can I study the language as a whole? Can I study all of that at the same time? It's impossible. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for linguists to study the language as a whole. They have to divide it into components. They said, okay, if we're going to study the language scientifically, we're going to study the sounds first, then I'm going to study the words, then we're going to study the phrases and sentences, then we're going to study the meaning. My question is now, why do we have them in this order? Why I chose this order? Is it random?
No, because sounds make words and words make phrases and sentences.
Excellent. And the meaning is actually beyond the sentences and the phrases. So again, we said we're going to start with sounds, then words, then phrases and sentences, then meaning. Why, for example, I did not start with phrases and sentences, then I can study sounds? No, actually, it doesn't work. I need to start with sounds first, then words, then phrases and sentences, then meaning. Why? I can remember you. You've taken English grammar and context with me. What was her name? Yara. Yes, Yara says, actually because the words are a combination of sounds. Or words are made up of sounds. Phrases and sentences are made up of words. And the meaning is actually beyond the phrases and sentences. Do you see why we have this order? So what you have in the textbook, you're going to see, this is not random. We chose this order for you because we have a reason. Our reason, if you want to study a language, you have to study the sounds first because they are the smallest units of language. Just like, for example, the sound ta. The sound ta, I'm not talking about the letter T. Okay, this is not a letter, this is a sound. If you talk about letters, you can say T, S, and so on, F, and so on. If I'm talking about the sound, I'm saying ta. So, the sound ta, for example, is the smallest unit of language. Okay, I don't know how I can use that. I can touch that to right? Yeah, okay. Can I with my hand or what? I'm not sure how this works. Yes. Okay, look at this. This is the sound ta. It's actually the smallest unit of language. If I have a word with the sound ta, could be tree, for example. It's actually bigger than the sound ta. So actually, if we look at the phrases and sentences, if you say, I saw a tree. If you look at this, phrases and sentences, the word tree now is in a sentence. It's actually bigger than the word. Meaning is actually beyond the phrase, the sentence, I saw a tree. It's beyond. You see what I'm talking about? Do you see why I actually have this order? Again, I'm going to do this quickly. We start with the sounds. If you look at the book, we're going to study sounds first. Why? Because sounds are the smallest units of language. A little bit bigger is actually the word. What's bigger than the word? Phrases and sentences. What's bigger than the phrases and sentences? Actually the meaning, because it's actually above or beyond the phrases and sentences. Do we understand this order? Do you understand why you have this order in your textbook? Okay. Since this is a science, we cannot say, for example, we're going to study the sounds. Well, of course we're going to study the sounds, but we're going to study the sounds scientifically, because this is linguistics, right? We should actually come up with a name, with a scientific name for that. We said the study of sounds scientifically, let's call it phonetics and phonology. So if I want to study the sounds, we call this phonetics and phonology. You're going to see later that phonetics and phonology, yes, they deal with sounds, but they have their own differences. They're not the same thing. We're going to talk about this later when we start talking about phonics and phonology. Again, both of these branches of linguistics, branches of linguistics deal with sounds, but they have their own differences, okay? Number 2, the study of the word scientifically, we call this morphology. So morphology is a branch of linguistics that studies words. Yeah? Then you have number 3, the study or that branch of linguistics that studies phrases and sentences, we call that syntax. And meaning, that branch of linguistics that studies meaning, we call that semantics and pragmatics. Just like phonetics and phonology, semantics and pragmatics deal with meaning, but they have their own differences. Of course, we're going to talk about this throughout the course. Yeah? So notice they came up with scientific names for that. Yeah? It's not actually also random. So we may call these branches of linguistics, and that's what you have in your syllabus. If you look at this tentative schedule, this is what we're going to study. We're going to start with phonetics, which is the study of sounds. Also phonology, it is the study of sounds, but in a different way, a little bit different. We're going to talk about this. Then we're going to study the structure of words, which is morphology. And notice that this also we're going to talk about word formation processes. Don't worry, we're going to talk about this in details. Then you have syntax, where we study phrases and sentences. Then we have semantics and pragmatics, where we study the meaning. Of course, when you study the meaning or any of these, it's going to be in a very scientific way. It means we're going to use theories. Yeah? Okay. Why are you taking this course? We're taking this course because it helps you to know what courses you're going to take later in the English department. So, for example, when you're done with this course, you have to register for phonetics class. You have to know what phonetics is in order to register for that class. For example, you have morphology classes. We have this as an elective course. So you say, okay, what is morphology? That's why you take Introduction to Linguistics, to know what you're going to take later in the English department. Is this clear? You have this in the article. Let me show you. Okay, before I continue, if you look here, page 8. Do you see page 8 here? You have speech and writing. We said actually language is an abstract word that can be realized or physically realized into speech and writing. What you have here is actually the difference between speech and writing. I think this is pretty obvious. What is the difference between speech and writing? Right? Okay, let me look at these very quickly. They say speech composed of sounds, of course, and writing composed of letters and signs. Very obvious. Makes use of intonation. What's intonation? What's intonation? Okay, for example, let's say when your voice goes up or when your voice goes down in English, when you pronounce English sentences, this is intonation. For example, if I said, are you Palestinian? My voice is actually going up. This is intonation. If I said, what are you doing? My voice is going down. So this is intonation. That's actually, if you actually graduated from high school and you don't know what intonation is, you've taken English for like 12 years now. 12 years, and this is like the 30th year. Is it? And you don't know what intonation is. Teachers actually should have taught you what intonation is. In order to actually speak English, pronounce English properly, we have to use the right intonation. For example, for yes or no questions, I would say, my voice is going to go up. For example, for WH question, my voice should go down. This is intonation. Of course, we're not going to talk about intonation in this class. When you take phonology classes, we're going to talk about intonation and when our voice actually goes up or down. Do we have this in writing? Do you have intonation in writing? We don't. Yes. You have pitch, of course, high-pitched voice or low-pitched voice. Yeah? We're going to talk about this. Then you have rhythm. Of course, speech has rhythm. And tempo. Tempo means rate or speed. In writing, you cannot actually let's say, determine speed or rate. for writing, but you can for speech. Okay, if you look at this, makes use of punctuation and so on, just like graphological devices, just like italics, just like bold and so on. You have speech is produced effortlessly, no tools required. Of course, you don't need an effort to produce speech, but you need tools to actually have writing. Yeah, this is actually pretty obvious, but I'm just going through this very quickly. Then you have speech is transitory. It means it's temporary. Not just like writing, which is permanent. Because you cannot have a record for speech, but you can have a record for writing. Yeah? Then perceived by the ear, of course, and the writing perceived by the eye. You continue that by yourself. It's actually very obvious. Okay? So when you read the article, if you have a problem with any of these differences, let's just write and discuss them in class. Okay? Read this by yourself. This is actually for 10th graders. Okay? Okay, let's continue. You have the components of language in your article. Components of language. So where you have here, yes, you have this, just like that. On page, what page? 11. Yeah? If you look at this, language is composed of sounds, words. Then you have meaningful combination of words means phrases and sentences, right? Then you have meaning. Because if you have a combination of sounds, you're going to have words. If you have a combination of words, you're going to have phrases and sentences. If you have, for example, meaning is actually the last thing because it's beyond the phrases and sentences. It's above it. Okay? Do you have any questions about this? Any questions? No? Okay. What I need you to do for next time, that's enough for today actually, but you have to listen. What I need you to do next time is to read this article. Okay? Read it. Okay, this is, you have to understand, this is not like any course you've taken, because if you do not read daily, you're going to have problems. Lots and lots of new terms. Lots and lots of new things. Okay? So, read this article, which is very important in understanding what linguistics is. It actually tells you why this course is called Introduction to Linguistics and not Introduction to Language. Because it is a science. Yeah? Okay, for next time, if you have any questions about this, please do not hesitate to ask me. Okay, you can ask me in class. It's better to ask in class. Why? Because other students will benefit from it. Okay, we can discuss it together. Yeah, you can have other questions about it. Okay? Okay. For next time also, what I need you to do you have your textbook? Look at the first pages where you have page 42. I know. They start. Actually, it starts with page. Okay, just a minute. It starts with page 40 because we actually did not photocopy the book chapter 1 or anything. It actually starts with chapter 5. Okay? Sounds of language. Do you see that? Next time, I need you to look at page 42. Do you see the diagram? Do you see the diagram with the mouth? This one? Do you see this? Yes. What I need you to do is to look at it and try to understand what these words mean. Okay? Because you're going to see most of you will not be familiar with these words. Those are very new words for you. So try to look them up for you. Yeah? Look them up to see what they mean. Because next time when I talk about them, I'm not actually going to give you meanings of these words. I'm not sure what they mean in Arabic accurately, but I can tell you what that is. For example, I can tell you this is a larynx. Larynx, for example, because it's here in the throat. Inside my throat, I have a larynx. If you're not sure what a larynx is, look it up. For example, you have here tongue. You have the alveolar ridge. Alveolar ridge is just like after the teeth. So you can touch it with your tongue. But what does it mean in Arabic? You have to look it up. I'm not sure what it means in Arabic, okay? But we can actually refer to the parts of the mouth. So next time, actually, one of my students in my phonetics class, what do? They actually drew this on a big board. It was really interesting. I could actually bring that here for you to understand what do we mean? Or the anatomy of speech, or the vocal organs. We call this the vocal organs. If you can read it, if you understand anything from it. But we're going to explain everything in this textbook in details. Is this clear? Do you have any questions? No. Would you like to add something? Would you like to say something? Do you have any ideas? No? Let me take attendance.